Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck is one of the most emotional and psychologically powerful novels in American literature. Published in 1937 during the Great Depression, the book explores friendship, loneliness, dreams, poverty, discrimination, human dignity, and the fragile hope people cling to in difficult circumstances. Although the novel is short, its emotional impact is enormous because Steinbeck captures universal human struggles with extraordinary simplicity and realism. Beneath the story of two migrant workers traveling through California lies a deep reflection on isolation, survival, and the painful gap between dreams and reality. The story centers on George Milton and Lennie Small, two displaced ranch workers moving from place to place in search of temporary employment. They travel together because they share a bond rare in their harsh world. George is intelligent, practical, cautious, and emotionally responsible. Lennie is physically enormous and incredibly strong, but mentally disabled and childlike in his understanding of the world. This contrast between them forms the emotional core of the novel. Lennie depends heavily on George for guidance and protection, while George carries the burden of caring for someone he loves but cannot fully control. From the beginning, Steinbeck establishes one of the novel's major themes: loneliness. Most of the ranch workers live isolated lives. They move constantly. They own nothing permanent. They lack stable families, meaningful relationships, and long-term security. Many characters dream about something better because dreams become psychological survival mechanisms in a difficult world. George and Lennie share one dream above all others. They want to save enough money to buy a small piece of land where they can live independently. They imagine raising animals, growing food, and finally escaping dependence on cruel employers and unstable labor. For Lennie especially, the dream centers around tending rabbits, something he talks about repeatedly with childlike excitement. This dream represents far more than property. It symbolizes freedom, safety, dignity, belonging, control over one's life, hope for the future. Steinbeck uses this dream to reflect the broader American dream, the belief that hard work can create stability and happiness. But throughout the novel, he questions whether this dream is realistically attainable for vulnerable people trapped by economic hardship and social inequality. Another major theme is companionship. George and Lennie's friendship stands out because most workers on the ranch live emotionally detached lives. At one point, George explains that migrant workers are usually the loneliest people in the world because they have no real connection to others. George and Lennie are different because they have each other. This relationship gives them emotional strength. Yet Steinbeck also shows the complexity of caretaking. George sometimes feels exhausted, frustrated, and trapped by his responsibility toward Lennie. He imagines life would be easier alone. But even when angry, George consistently returns to loyalty and compassion. Their friendship reveals that human connection can provide meaning even under harsh conditions. Lennie himself is one of literature's most tragic characters. He is gentle by nature and does not wish harm on anyone. He loves soft things, small animals, and physical comfort. But because of his immense strength and limited understanding, he accidentally causes destruction repeatedly. Steinbeck creates tension by showing how innocence without awareness can become dangerous. Lennie symbolizes vulnerability in a world lacking patience or mercy. Society has no safe place for someone like him. Another important character is Candy, an aging ranch worker missing one hand. Candy fears becoming useless and disposable as he grows older. His old dog, worn out and no longer useful, becomes a painful symbol of what happens to beings society no longer values. When the dog is killed out of supposed mercy, the moment foreshadows later events in the novel and raises difficult questions about dignity, dependence, and survival. Candy becomes deeply attached to George and Lennie's dream because it offers him hope against loneliness and abandonment. Another major theme is discrimination and exclusion. Several characters experience isolation because of race, gender, age, disability, or weakness. Crooks, the black stable worker, lives separated from the others because of racism. He is highly intelligent and perceptive but deeply lonely. Years of discrimination have made him defensive and emotionally guarded. In one of the novel's most important conversations, Crooks explains how isolation damages the human mind. He says people need companionship because loneliness can break psychological stability. Crooks initially dismisses George and Lennie's dream because life has taught him disappointment. Yet even he briefly allows himself to hope when offered inclusion. This moment shows how powerful belonging can be. Another isolated character is Curly's wife. Notably, Steinbeck never gives her a personal name. She is defined socially only through her husband, reflecting the limited roles available to women in that environment. The men view her suspiciously or dismissively, while she herself suffers intense loneliness and frustration. She dreams of a glamorous life in Hollywood but ended up trapped in an unhappy marriage on a ranch. Her flirtation often masks emotional desperation rather than simple malice. Steinbeck presents her as both flawed and deeply lonely. This complexity is important because the novel repeatedly shows how isolation distorts behavior. Many characters lash out, fantasize, manipulate, or withdraw because emotional connection is missing. Another central theme is powerlessness. Nearly everyone in the novel exists at the mercy of larger forces. Economic instability, social hierarchy, prejudice, violence, disability, loneliness. Even hardworking people possess little real control over their future. This creates constant anxiety. The Great Depression setting intensifies this feeling because survival itself feels uncertain. The ranch environment also reflects a brutal social reality where strength often matters more than kindness. Curly, the boss's aggressive son, constantly seeks opportunities to assert dominance because power defines status in that world. Weakness invites humiliation. Fear shapes behavior. Violence remains close beneath the surface. Steinbeck also explores masculinity. Many characters suppress vulnerability because emotional openness appears dangerous. Loneliness becomes normalized among men expected to remain tough and detached. George and Lennie's friendship quietly challenges this expectation by showing emotional loyalty between men in a harsh environment. Another important theme is innocence versus reality. Lennie embodies innocence, but innocence alone cannot survive safely in a world governed by fear, misunderstanding, and force. Steinbeck repeatedly places Lennie's childlike behavior against unforgiving social consequences. This creates enormous emotional tension because readers understand tragedy approaching long before Lennie does. The novel's climax occurs when Lennie accidentally kills Curly's wife while trying to calm her panic after touching her hair. The scene is devastating because there is no malicious intent. Fear escalates. Strength overwhelms control. And irreversible tragedy occurs. At this point, George realizes society will not show Lennie compassion. A violent mob forms immediately, driven by anger and revenge. George understands Lennie's fate, if captured, would likely involve terror, abuse, and suffering. The novel's ending is one of the most heartbreaking in literature. George finds Lennie before the others do. He comforts him by once again describing their dream farm, the rabbits, and the peaceful future Lennie loved imagining. Then George kills Lennie mercifully before the mob arrives. This ending remains deeply debated morally and emotionally. Was George protecting Lennie from cruelty? Was it an act of mercy? Or does it reveal the tragic failure of a society incapable of caring for vulnerable people? Steinbeck intentionally leaves emotional complexity unresolved. The ending mirrors the earlier death of Candy's dog, reinforcing themes of usefulness, mercy, and survival in a harsh world. Another major lesson in the novel concerns dreams. Almost every character carries a dream. Hollywood, security, companionship, freedom, respect. But most dreams remain unreachable. Steinbeck does not mock dreams. Instead, he portrays them as necessary emotional fuel in difficult lives. Dreams sustain hope even when reality feels crushing. Yet he also warns how fragile dreams become when confronted by social and economic reality. The novel's title comes from a poem by Robert Burns about plans that gang aft egally, meaning plans often go wrong despite good intentions. This captures the novel perfectly. People hope. People try. But life remains unpredictable and painful. How can someone apply the lessons of Mice and Men today? First, recognize the importance of empathy toward vulnerable people. Second, understand how loneliness affects mental and emotional health. Third, value genuine friendship and loyalty. Fourth, avoid judging people solely by appearance or ability. Fifth, recognize that economic struggle deeply shapes human behavior. Sixth, understand that dreams matter psychologically even when difficult to achieve. Seventh, remember that strength without understanding can become destructive. Another practical lesson is compassion. Many characters suffer not only because of poverty, but because society lacks patience, inclusion, and emotional care. Steinbeck suggests human dignity depends greatly on how communities treat the weak, lonely, and marginalized. The final summary of Mice and Men is this: human beings survive hardship through hope, friendship, and the desire for belonging, but fragile dreams often collide with harsh reality. Loneliness wounds deeply. Power can corrupt compassion. And innocence alone cannot protect people from a cruel world. Yet even within tragedy, Steinbeck shows something profoundly human: the need to care for one another despite suffering. In the end, the novel reminds readers that dignity, friendship, and empathy may be among the most valuable things people can offer in an uncertain world.